To go deep into the relevance of the 16th Summit of the BRICS 2024, from Ecuador, we invite political analyst Eduardo Meneses. Hi, Eduardo. Thank you for your time hearing from the South.
Thank you for the invitation.
The BRICS Summit comes to an end after 3 days of intense debates. Can we say that this event will mark a before and an after in the world's political order as a counterweight, or we could say as a counterweight of hegemonic powers?
Well, I do believe that this forum is specifically suited for answering the challenges that we are living right now as a historic moment. A historic moment in terms of the war scenario that is being structured in our planet, in different conflicts, Ukraine and Russia, the genocide in Palestine, all the tensions that the US are financing against China through Taiwan. So definitely, I think that in the middle of this growing tension between the US and the emerging multipolar world, this forum has had a very specific and important role, which is confirming its proposal to a restructuring for the global governance. So in that sense, it is very important. There are still many things to be built, but the dynamic that this forum is taking in this historical moment is key for the next decade.
The meeting took place amid an uncertain international scenario marked by the Israeli genocide against the people of Palestine and as well as the increased aggressions against Lebanon and Syria. How the summit has been a space to voice the suffering of the peoples of the Middle East?
So I think that we could see three main things here. The first one is when we observe how the BRICS are expanding to new members, we definitely see Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia. And this is an expansion which is very different from the traditional Western-led governance, which is including G7, G8 groups they are trying to have an hegemonic perspective from the Western perspective led by the US. So that's a first point where definitely the Middle East countries are more and more involved and more taking account in this new multipolar order that is emerging, which is not something that someone decides. It is a reality from the economic, geopolitical facts. There's a second very important point, which was highlighted in the declaration of this summit, which was the total support for the inclusion of Palestine as a complete UN member. So this, again, this has been a position that has been already been defended by all the countries in the BRICS, but having this regional support perspective as a whole new perspective of multilateralism is essential to support the Palestinian right to have a state which is recognized, which deserves to live in peace, which has to be respected and not being occupied by military forces, and even worse, being a victim of genocide. But the third one, and I think that would be maybe the most important point in terms of long-term perspective, is the concrete support for a reform of the UN Security Council. We have been seeing that in many forums, but we have now the BRICS officially in its declaration claiming the need for a new architecture of the UN and specifically the Security Council, where we should have a Security Council which is more inclusive of new members, being emerging economies, but also developing countries, reducing the veto power that has only the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, and also much more transparency and accountability of what decisions taken there. So all of that makes a very clear signal towards the necessity of thinking how Palestine cannot become or cannot open a new era of brutality, of violation of human rights without anything happening, right? So this is a very important message.
Right, Eduardo, Israel's policy of blockading Gaza has resulted in hunger and dire health conditions for the population. Also, the U.S. blockade against Cuba similarly has resulted in difficult conditions for ordinary Cubans. So how do you see blockades and sanctions as a foreign policy tool when this affects mainly the population of a country?
Well, this is, in fact, this was also a very important point discussed in the BRICS Summit, right? There was this clear denouncement made about how these unilateral sanctions are being used as an imperialist tool by the US and some of the European allies against countries that do not align with their geopolitical goals. In fact, if we see a little bit under the lines, the European Commission, very shortly after the release of the declaration of the summit, of the BRICS Summit, they stated that they were not agreeing with some of the things that were said there because clearly this summit expressed the total illegal decisions that have been taken and sanctions that have been taken by the European Commission, by the US, against Iran, for example, against Russia, for example, when they are saying that they are taking this for because there are violations of human rights, there are violations of democratic rights, but at the same time, they're saying anything against Israel. So that was a very important topic that was treated in the BRICS. I do believe that it's time now that, and that we can see totally how these sanctions have been evolving in the last 2 decades and are being used totally as a financial weapon. It is not neither the US, neither the European Commission or the European Parliament are taking account of human rights or democratic rights. All of those has been mere excuses for, in fact, taking a financial war against the countries that are not answering to their geopolitical goals. This is very clear in the case of Cuba, as you mentioned, the case of Venezuela. And in fact, what we do need is actual democratic decisions in the UN when we can take military embargo, for example, as a continuation of the decision that has been both voted in the UN General Assembly or even in the UN Security Council by the Council of the International Court of Justice. For example, we have had 1 year of many international decisions that have been rooted on human rights against what Israel is doing as a genocide. Palestine, and nothing has happened. So this clearly reveals how this has been merely all these sanctions are being used by the US and European countries as a part of their financial war for the ones who are not answering to their interests.
Thank you, Eduardo, very much for your time here from the South.